Welcome to a football show Thursday edition, brought to you by the Kingston Group and the Pharmacy, our two great and amazing local sponsors. My name is Braden Gall. His name is Zach Lyons, and you can follow him on Twitter at FWordsPod. You can subscribe to his Substack, stackingtheinbox.com, and please jump into the comments here on the YouTube, Facebook, Twitter page. And if you got any questions, we got and I know you like this word, Zach, a robust show for you folks out there, you Titans fans, you pro and college football fans. Robust today on the show. Lots of stuff to do. We've got Anthony Richardson hype, I guess, going out of control. We've got which positions Zach is watching throughout the course of the weekend, which positions are most important, of course. And then we've got a debate about positional value on the field due to future success, largely based around Jeffrey Simmons and the franchise quarterback in terms of what Titans fans should value moving forward in terms of success. Rand Carthon says they're open for business. What does that mean? And what do we like about some of those potential strategic options for the Tennessee Titans? And then a fun debate that I know you can't wait for because I know you love. There's two things I feel like you love more than everything else, Zach. And that is contract conversations and analytics conversations. I feel like those are two of your favorite topics. Am I correct on that?
I would say definitely I love offseason hype or offseason. Basically anything that has to do with the offseason I like. So whether that is the combine, the draft, the draft and I would say the draft and free agency are above analytics, but analytics is up there.
But analytics is also baked fully into the draft and the combine in full force. And if you'd like some analytics in your inbox, Zach's giving you some data that you can use, some tools that you can use to follow along the combine and the draft process. So again, stackingtheinbox.com. And again, Tim Kelly, Mike Vrabel, Rand Carthon, all speaking, of course, this week at the press conference. I know you guys, you and Mike Herndon spent a lot of time on Football and Other Efforts. Check out that show, talking about the press conferences and the conversations. I don't know how much there was said there, but we'll get into that. And if you got questions and comments, please jump into the comment section for sure. Please, I have no idea, Stoney, what you're talking about, but please give us some questions. If you got any of those, we'll get to those as we move along today in the program. Jalen Carter, though.
However, he's talking about this guy.
Is that those are Funko
Macho
Pops
Man
or
Funko Pop? Apparently, a value of $330 according to a Pop Price Guide.
Does it need to be?
I don't know how much it is out of the box, Stoney, but if it's anywhere above $30, let me know and we'll sell this sucker.
That's what I was going to ask. Does it matter if it's in the box or not? It sounds like it does. Fitzy, my old co-host, has a ton of those things.
He's what got me started on it.
Adam Sparks of the Tennessee, or formerly of the Tennessee and now up in Knoxville, great Vanderbilt beat writer, now covering Tennessee, good friend of the pod. He has like a gazillion of them, like in his office. I've never been into it, but they're cool. I like them. I've got like an old bobblehead back here.
Stoney just said I can make a cool 100 off the Joker that's at somewhere around here that's out of the box, and I'm like, dude, I'll sell them. I ain't got no emotional attachment to this.
You're sitting on a gold mine there.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of sitting on a gold mine and potentially screwing it all up, Jalen Carter, and we don't need to get into too many specifics here. He is unquestionably probably the best prospect in the draft. Maybe you could argue a couple of other guys, but basically he's the most proven pro-ready player at any position. If somebody's at number one with that doesn't need a quarterback, Jalen Carter is clearly probably the option at number one. You guys know the story. Arrest warrant, 2 misdemeanors, flies back, leaves the combine, the whole deal. The question I have is, does it affect his draft stock, the entire situation? I think there's a path forward for him. And do the Titans consider him if he falls to 11, even if I think that is extremely unlikely?
Yeah, so I agree with you. It's extremely unlikely that he's going to be there at 11. I would also say that we're talking, if you're talking whether he's going to go number one or not. I mean, wasn't he already not going to go number one because the Bears are more than likely going to trade at him? The Bears stay put. I'll say this. It affects his draft stock in a way that probably nobody's really talking about, is the fact that there could have been a team willing to trade up for Jalen Carter.
Okay.
So nobody's thinking about that. Now I don't think that's as likely. So that kind of hurts his draft stock in that situation. But if you're talking about a guy that is probably not going to go number one overall unless the Bears, for whatever reason, don't find a trade partner, I don't think you're still talking about a guy that's probably going to be this second or third, the first player that's non-quarterback off the board. It may allow Will Anderson to creep in over him, and but that's about it. Then we're not talking like Lucas Van Ness is going to jump him, Paris Johnson, Peter Skoronski.
Christian Gonzalez is not going ahead of.
Yeah, this is not a Laramie Tunsil free fall, an Aaron Rodgers free fall. Now, we'll say that if you have not read the Sports Illustrated column by Albert Breer that came out today, it's been alluded to all offseason that Jalen Carter has character concerns. None of those character concerns were tied to this incident, and none of those character concerns are related to criminal incidents. They are related to essentially an air of laziness when it comes to his approach to the game. He's great on game day. He's all in, and he has this natural ability, so his effort in practices aren't necessarily there, according to reports from both AFC execs, NFC execs, scouts, et cetera, et cetera.
If you start talking about how much does he love ball, which we know the Titans have already used, we want guys who love ball, right? If we're talking about a Georgia player with car driving issues late at night with guys who do, like, you're going to give him PTSD right out of the gate. Now, I will say this, athletically on the field, the difference between Isaiah Wilson and Jalen Carter is night and day.
Oh, night and day.
One of them is a projection, and the other one is a proven commodity.
I think they're night and day off the field. We don't know really the whole story, but let's be honest here. I don't think that Jalen Carter has some weird lean addiction headspace, going to jump off a balcony. I think he's a young guy that's done some stupid stuff that we've all done, and it resulted in ultimately the incident in the death of someone else. The problem is it's not the question, does he love the game of football? He doesn't love the work ethic to put in to the game of football. And I think that is a huge thing, because alpha number one overall elite trait players have to be mentally dedicated to the game.
I do think almost every human is night and day with Isaiah Wilson. So that's almost a benchmark we need to kind of set moving forward. I do think you're right about where he's probably going to go. I don't think if he was the third, fourth, or fifth pick in the draft before this incident, I still think he's probably the third, fourth, or fifth pick in the draft after this. There's also a very clear path forward here for him, which I think is, to your point about PR. Like, people don't understand. I don't understand why PR executives, I know there's a legal thing here and he's got to be careful with what he says publicly. But if you just go down, these are not felonies, these are misdemeanors. If you go down there and you say, yes, I did it, take your medicine, plead guilty, apologize, be remorseful, almost all of the NFL will forgive you, and they're going to take him number 3 or 4 or 5. Like, it's not that complicated for him to get through all of this. So it's why I don't think if he falls, because I talked to somebody covering the Raiders, I said, if he makes it to 7, would they take him? And he's like, no chance, because of the Henry Ruggs situation, because it's exactly the same, unfortunately. But
little bit different. It's a little bit different. I mean, there was alcohol involved on Henry Ruggs' part and all that kind of stuff.
Well, but I mean, the player who died had a blood alcohol level 2 times the legal limit, and
well, no, the recruiting staffer did. The player did not. So let's gotta make sure that the guy driving, which was the recruiting staffer, who was 24 years old, he was a young recruiting staffer. He was the one that was the .192 or 196, whatever that was.
You're talking about the female, right? The woman?
Whoever the recruiting staffer is. I am not using pronouns. That is the guy that is, or that person is the one that was driving the car and had the blood alcohol content.
The point is, he's not going to make it to 11. And if he does, the Titans should take him probably 1,000 times out of 1,000. There's no reason to go up and get him if he falls to 6, 7, or 8. I don't think. Because I don't think he's going to fall that far. So I think it is. I will say the reason we bring it up is that it is. I don't know about you. It is unprecedented to see the potential number 1 overall pick in the draft be pulled off of a podium right before he goes up because of a warrant for his arrest. That is just an unprecedented sentence that anyone has ever uttered about the
There's
combine.
Some good stuff that works out in his favor. Like you said, it's just 2 misdemeanors. He wasn't under the influence. That's a big thing. So that helps alleviate a lot of the concerns. I agree with you in the sense that this post that he put up saying that, well, when the real story comes out and blah, 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 like, dude, this was over a month-long investigation.
Yeah.
They have traffic cameras. You're guilty. Like, you're guilty of the misdemeanor, and that's all they're charging you with, right? I mean, after a month-long investigation, there's no charge of driving under the influence. There's no charge of vehicular manslaughter. I mean, there's no
It's reckless
there's no
driving and
additional
racing.
charge.
Yeah.
So you are 100% right. His agent, his PR staff should have said, listen, we're just going to go down here, pay this $4,000 bond. Like if it's not even a $10,000 bond, it's a $4,000. Like
plead guilty, say you're sorry, and it's over.
Let's go.
It's over. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Speaking of the segment, it's over. So let's take a look at. So Carthon said some stuff about like when the weather turns cold, you got to be physical and run the football, which we know fits into Mike Vrabel's identity. That's what Mike Vrabel has long believed in. I sort of as a 40-year-old have always long believed in defense and running the football has won championships historically. That has evolved. My opinion on that has evolved over the course of time. So I'm curious, and we're going to talk a little bit more about modernizing the analytics department because Carthon said a lot of stuff this week in that area. But there's some people that like kind of came back at Carthon and just said, look, I think he mentioned kind of the Golden State Warriors, and it's like, oh, people you still got to get down to it's basketball on grass, but you still got to get down to being physical and running the football, and that's how you win in January and December and January. And the pushback on that was, well, but look at all the rings the Golden State has and look at the style of football that Kansas City has been playing. I think you could argue Cincinnati to some degree as well. Look at the style of football that has been successful and won. And the question is what are the correlations here? Like, is there a correlation that is a big deal? Is it just an offhand comment because he likes running the football and being physical, and those are two things that are important? Like, I don't. What do we make of the Golden State analogy and the basketball and grass and the style of football that Kansas City's playing relative to what Rand Carthon wants to execute?
The same thing I thought after his initial presser. Like, to me, the people that and Mike is one of them. Mike, when he made these comments yesterday, and everybody started jumping, all the national media started paying attention to the Titans, started jumping on this. This press conference that he had is almost identical in words used to his opening press conference. Outside of his attitude was a lot more happier in the first one. This is a nothing burger. It was a nothing burger. Then we talked about it on this show. We talked about football and F words. This is a big nothing burger comment because this does not mean anything other than it aligns with what Mike Vrabel has said. It aligns with what the NFL says. Go back to the Super Bowl of the Eagles. How'd they get there? Running the football. And then what they do? Run the football and play great defense. The Chiefs did lean a little bit heavier in the winter months on Isaiah Pacheco. And then you go turn around to the previous year. The Rams and the Bengals, they were trying to outduel each other on the ground. Does nobody remember? Because it drove me nuts. I'm thinking, why are they continuing to run the ball?
Right.
Like, because they both were sucking at it.
They were just both being so stubborn about it.
Yeah. and then like someone put Tom Brady. Well, when Tom Brady won the Super Bowl, they were the fifth best passing offense. Well, look, they didn't make it to the Super Bowl because of Tom Brady. They made it to the Super Bowl because of that defense in the postseason. And that's what it's all about. You have to have an efficient run game. Unless you're going to run into a guy with just as equally as a least efficient run game like the Bengals and the Rams, you have to have an efficient run game to compete. And it's not about eating up the clock because everybody started then jumping on to eating the clock and eating up all this stuff. And it's just about playing good, sound football. And that's essentially what he's saying is that, yeah, it's great to those Mike White games that everybody went crazy for on the offseason. It's great to have those in like September and October, but when it gets colder, you need to have a run game that you can rely on because it's going to be difficult to throw in certain climates.
And I think you and I have talked a lot about this. How to define running the football has changed, right? Yes. Like it's changed. It used to be this thing in like 1998 that involved Emmitt Smith getting X amount of carries between the tackles, this many plays in a game that was going to end up being 23-20 with 42 plays. It's changed. And some of this, I always go back to my conversations with offensive coordinators in college football around the Mike Leach system, which is essentially the system that every football team runs to some degree. But the way it got better and more evolved was being able to run the football when you need to. And the way coordinators explained that to me was situationally in terms of short yardage, red zone, goal line. Maybe you do have a lead in the fourth quarter, and then and weather as well. When like you just simply can't throw the ball because it's pouring down rain or there's just snow everywhere or whatever. It's about running the ball when you have to in the right moments and being efficient with that running game. I think defense goes without saying. Now, as we've said on the show just a couple weeks ago, you need to have a top 10 offense. An efficient running game is how you can get to a top 10 offense with an efficient running game. So I want to move this conversation into sort of the modernization of the front office of the Tennessee Titans and package it with those two identities that we know Vrabel still wants to have, right? Efficient running football and physicality, right? But if we move it forward into what Rand Carthon talked a lot about this week in terms of modernizing the front office, hiring Chad Brinker, who's got this AI deal with Northwestern and this S2 company here in Nashville, all about processing and analytics. Like clearly, this administration is significantly more progressive and more analytics data driven than the last administration under John Robinson. Not hard to do. The question I have that I find really interesting is can you do like sort of not like an old school, but like this defense physicality mentality on the field that Mike Vrabel sort of has and mirror that and marry that to back end front office data and analytics and tracking and like what does that look like in your mind when you put those two things together?
The 49ers. I mean, I don't understand. I guess it's for a lack of content in the off season for some of these places, but you know, for me, it's just like it's the 49ers. If you want an example of a modernized offense that has a focus of running the football, that uses analytics, in the off season, uses analytics game day, that uses analytics to make cap decisions, to make injury decisions and spot trends and do this and that. It's the San Francisco 49ers. Like the San Francisco 49ers, the Shanahan offense that everybody wants to duplicate, that everybody wants to emulate, that everybody wants their offense to run and be, is focused on running the football efficiently. Like it drives me insane that people think that San Francisco is some high-flying modern offense when it's been around since forever. I remember getting into fantasy football and knowing that it doesn't matter who the Denver running back when Mike Shanahan was down there. He's Terrell getting 1,000 yards. Reuben Drones, sign me up. I'll put you on my team.
Clinton Portis.
Yeah, I mean, like, it did not matter who was back there running the football. And that is still the same thing for Shanahan in 2023. 1993 Shanahan and Shanahan in 2023, or 2003 Shanahan, we'll put it there. They're the same thing. It does not matter who is running the football. They're going to run it, and they're going to run efficiently. And then they're going to build off the run.
I would also say the Night King echoed those sentiments as well, Tim Kelly, when he talked about the illusion of complexity, which is, to me, largely how I would define the San Francisco offense. And if you want to kind of go further down that path, because I think Tim Kelly did take a little bit of heat. And I know you had some comments on F-Words about this, about just sort of maybe I don't want to say like he feels like he's towing the company line too much when it comes to the like, oh, I'm not going to say anything about
he's out of practice. He hasn't had to talk to the media
right.
Because, I mean, got to shield everybody.
But
I mean, like this Titans organization.
Right.
The old Titans organization.
Right. The key is you can run Derrick Henry in the B gap on the left side of the offensive line out of 11 personnel, 12 personnel, 13 personnel. You can run him in the shotgun. You can run it in the pistol. You can run him motioning into the backfield. You can run him not motioning. The idea is you can run Derrick Henry into the same spot a million different ways before you actually run him into that spot. And it's just, I don't think it's that complicated to understand. You want your offense playing fast, and simple just comes off as like a kind of an old word, I feel like, because football is not a simple game. But the reason Shanahan, and this is like not new information here, guys, like the reason Shanahan's offense is so special is how he confuses everybody. He's doing the same stuff. He just does it with different people in different places, moving around in different ways from different formations, and it all ends up being the same thing eventually, but you just don't know where and when it's coming.
Well, I mean, you got to look at it this way. That right now, Tim Kelly has no clue what his offense is going to look like because he has no clue what the personnel looks like. Because that right there was a big telling situation. And Mike Vrabel even said that it's pretty much an open competition at every spot. Rand Carthon has said that essentially they're looking for positionless players. Like this is a almost. I feel like it's almost irresponsible for people to make sweeping generalizations about what this team will be because we really don't know. We know they want to get more vertical because that's what Tim Kelly said, but they don't really have the players to get vertical in the traditional sense. They do have Traylon Burks and they do have Chig Okonkwo, but that's a different kind of vertical. It's not like Brandon Cooks going deep vertical that you saw with the Houston Texans and Deshaun Watson, throwing it, 70 yards down the field through the air and right to him, dropping it down. It's not able to be that, but that's at least, that's what they want to be. I feel like the coaches almost do get done a disservice by the PR group. And there's a lot of stuff when I went back and rewatched the Tim Kelly press conference. There's a lot of stuff that got washed away because of the predictable thing, which, by the way,
did you have to watch it a second time because you were distracted the first time because of the eyes?
Oh yeah, those eyes are
the White Walker Night King guy. Okay,
yeah, they suck you in.
That looked photoshopped, is what that looked.
But people say stupid stuff all the time in press conferences that they don't really mean, and it happens all the time. And he's just out of practice. I mean, hell, you had Nolan Smith get up and say that Georgia does more with less than any other team in the NCAA, which I thought was the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life.
I'm not sure he knows what that phrase means.
Yeah. Or I don't know where this Georgia underdog mentality come from. We talked about it a few weeks ago.
It's rat poison, dude. It's your boy.
It's the most ridiculous statement I've ever heard a college football player say.
It's Nick Saban teaching Kirby how to sell rat poison to his team. That's what that is.
Doing more with less. Georgia defense. They really have to overcome a lot of obstacles.
We are the most disrespected team in America.
Yeah, they don't have anything. I mean, that boosters, they hardly pay them any money. Probably no NIL. Facilities suck.
Athens is a terrible place to live.
Yeah, fucking Georgia doing more with less since 2003.
Again, probably a misspeak by Nolan Smith. So,
but I will say that if your head coach has already said, we got to get less predictable, then you go out there and say twice that you didn't think that the team was predictable. There is a communication error somewhere, whether it's in your own brain and it's miswired, but it was not a good thing to say. And then it totally overshadows all the good stuff he said, where he talked about getting vertical, where he talked about explosive plays, and he talked about, waiting to see what the personnel is, getting Chig involved, getting Traylon Burks involved. It also overshadows the fact that Rand Carthon said we're not going to build around one person when he was asked specifically about building around Derrick Henry. We're not going to build around one person, which tells you right there they're not building around the running back. I mean, they know that is not, they're not building around this running back, and because they know that is not the way forward for this team to be successful. I do find it funny in the conversation of all of this, though, that this S2 thing. So I'm going to go back to Malik Willis and this S2 thing. John Robinson hired them in September of this year, according to Joe Rexrode. What's funny is that they've been trying to get the Titans to sign with them for years.
Oh, God.
And they're in Nashville. And apparently they weren't going through the proper channels, supposedly, to a few different people. They were going through the strength and conditioning, trying to get through up there. But either way, it wasn't getting to John Robinson and all that kind of stuff. I know that they are really high on this draft class, 2023, with this cognitive performance, the S2 group.
Mental processing.
Yes. They're a lot higher on this one than last year's draft class. That's all I can say, and that's all I've gotten information out of some various people concerning this. That should tell you everything you need to know about last year's draft class of quarterbacks.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But I find it funny that with Malik Willis as your backup quarterback and Ryan Tannehill as the quarterback, and maybe there's an unspoken package deal, but I find it funny that people are so up in arms about this not wanting to pass the ball, the Golden State Warriors thing, but also not believing in Ryan Tannehill. They're the same people for the most part. I mean, there's a big, large cross section where it's like, I hate Ryan Tannehill. Malik Willis sucks, but we need to pass the ball more anyway, even though I hate all these people. Like, that doesn't jive.
So I think, and I'm going to shamelessly do this here. I think this is what I am seeing sort of, I'm trying to step back from all this because we can get really in the weeds on an individual player or Malik Willis's processing speed or, Ryan Tannehill and the offense and Golden State comparisons and the Chiefs and Mahomes. And we can go so into the weeds on all this stuff. I'm going to step back 10,000 feet and talk about a recipe and a plan because our two great sponsors are a burger joint and a construction company, or I should say a design firm, Kingston Group, of course, and the pharmacy. So the recipe that I am seeing, brought to you by the pharmacy, right over there on East Nashville, of course, on McFerrin Avenue. Great burgers, great brats, great mustard, great tots, great place to hang out and go have a great lunch when it's not severe weather warnings every single freaking day. Of course, it is, what is it, March 2nd? We probably shouldn't say anything about severe weather on March 2nd, but especially in my neighborhood. The recipe that I am seeing, brought to you by the pharmacy, is this like combination of all the things that I really like about 2023 football, right? It is this modernized, data-driven, experienced front office with a teacher and a leader and an experienced head coach, mixed with sort of this scheme and style, which I think is the biggest missing piece of this that we don't know yet, that we think wants to be like Kyle Shanahan's offense, right? That we want it to be versatile. He said violent, he added violent, but he wants it. We've seen positionless, versatile, fast, right? Like we know what they want to be. That is a recipe that feels very productive moving forward. Now you got to get the pieces to work in it. You've got to have the right guy calling the plays. You need the right chef. You need you need all the right stuff to happen. But that feels like the right recipe to keep it physical, keep it like Mike Vrabel as a teacher and a leader and a physical philosophy with this modern analytics front office and an offense that is just uber complicated before the snap, but super fast after the snap. Like that's what you want. And that is brought to you by the pharmacy. That's also a great plan for success, brought to you by the Kingston Group, Nashville's locally owned.
And it's a plan that we're seeing in action when you talk about the coaching staff, when you talk about the front office staff. It's happening. Whether you want to keep your head in the sand or not about this team coming into the 21st century, the Titans have now entered the chat, the 21st century chat. They are here. Now it's about to be the 22nd century here soon. So we got to, speed up this process and catch up. But
I don't want Google calling plays. Okay.
They are one of 14 teams currently with S2. That's ahead of the curve. And that is a good sign for this team.
Yeah. And again, all these things it doesn't mean that the game you see and the style of play changes. Like it doesn't, I think people think again, it's all this modernized 21st data analytics, all this stuff, and it's just going to turn into like nerd ball. And I don't think that's not what Mike Vrabel will ever deliver to people on the field. Like he's not going to coach like finesse. That's not ever going to be his identity. I do think that Minnesota's an interesting one to me. When you brought up your answer was like San Francisco, right? Like how you define this, the combination that we're talking about. And I find Minnesota to be interesting because I think they obviously have a lot of San Francisco ties in the front office, a lot of data and analytics and progressive thinking in the front office. They're a little bit more Kansas City-ish in how they operate in terms of their offensive scheme. So it's not quite the same, but they also have elite weapons as well in the backfield and in receiver. I'm not sure about Cousins, but I'm curious what you think of comparing Minnesota to San Francisco, and then what does that mean from the Titans? Because there's some overlap, but there's also some differences.
Yeah, the Minnesota thing's a little hard for me because you're talking about the most comebacks in NFL history are tied with the most in a season was 8 with Kirk Cousins. So it's almost like what you saw, all this passing offense was out of necessity, right? I mean, like it was almost out of necessity. I think if you would ask, they would much rather go play action, run game. I think if you honestly polled all NFL coaches, head coaches and said, how would you prefer to run your offense? And if they said, man, it would be really nice to have a great run game, take some pressure off my quarterback, and do a lot of play action, I guarantee you, I think I would say probably 31 to 30 of the head coaches would say that. Don't you? I mean,
who are the two that don't?
I don't know. I'm just leaving it up for
Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, no, Mike McCarthy definitely would if you haven't seen his comments.
Josh McDaniels.
I'm just leaving it open for the possibility that's not 100%.
No, I think that goes right back to our point about everyone wants to run the ball and knows they need to run the ball. It's how and when you do it to be the most efficient running game that is what matters. Again, unless you've the reason I don't like the Kansas City Golden State thing is because you could just sit here and say and win the entire argument by being like, but Mahomes is the anomaly. Like Mahomes is like it's peak Aaron Rodgers, it's peak Tom Brady, it's peak Peyton Manning, it's peak John Elway. He's just an anomaly, and you can't go find that guy. So I don't like comparing everybody to Mahomes. I don't think that's necessarily fair. All right, I do think it's a fascinating blend of ingredients brought to you by the pharmacy that I really like.
Okay, we talking about Isaiah Pacheco, right? And we were talking about what basically they do, what this means, what this Golden State, come November, December means. Here's what the Chiefs did with Isaiah Pacheco, who was available all 17 games by month. September, they were 17 attempts in the month of September.
Is this for the whole team, or is this just for this player?
It's for Isaiah Pacheco, who is the number one running back.
Was he number one the whole season, though?
I don't know. Can I just fucking get through it?
Well, because that context matters. If he's not the starting back, then you can't use his carries.
Oh, my God. Well, just fuck it. Fuck it.
Don't get all pissed off.
Well, I mean, I can't go back and check and pull all this stuff because I'm on Isaiah Pacheco's page and it makes for bad radio. Either way, his carries went to 58 and 58 in November and December.
I as a fantasy owner of his who picked him up mid-season because he wasn't being used, I agree with that. I just want to know, as an offense, were they running the ball more efficient, like more as I mean, obviously
I tried to find that and I could not find the splits. So I'd have to go through and do every freaking
Let's do it live. Let's do it live.
Well, I'll say this. Clyde's Edward-Helaire and Jerick McKinnon, who were splitting the snaps, I believe they were doing a three-headed monster. Yeah. We're talking about 71 and 72 total attempts. So they obviously, for the whole year, ran more as the season went on.
Yeah, and even if you just go by, yards, I mean, they had a couple of nice games early. They ran against the Raiders, they ran against the Bucks, actually, for 189, but they were under 100 against the Chargers. They were under 100 against the Colts in week 3. They were under 70 against the Bills in that loss in October. They were under 70 again. And then it's 155, 163, 117, 138 in November. And they go for 189 against the Texans, but that's the Texans. And then they finished up with 168 against Vegas. But you know what? In the playoffs, they ran the ball against the Eagles and the Jaguars. that was with Pacheco for sure.
Okay, so the highest total for Clyde Edward-Helaire in October was 43 carries. He did 22 in September, and we're talking about 17 and 17, I think, for the other two. So when you take into account that they were doing 58 and 58 just by Isaiah Pacheco in November and October, then you're talking about that they started leaning heavily on the run and leaning heavier on the run than what they were because it got a little bit dicier as it went on.
And the ankle injury, Mahomes can't run around and do everything that he was doing as well. So I think there is some validity to that. Oh, by the way, everybody kind of gets this way in December and January.
Yes, everybody gets this way.
But again, also Mahomes is also an anomaly as well. So there's that. Speaking of quickly here, being at number 11, of course, you're listening to us here on a football show brought to you by the Kingston Group and a pharmacy. And the pharmacy, not a pharmacy. Rand Carthon said we're open for business. Is this a nothing burger here? I guess what I'm interested.
Absolutely, it is.
Of course, everything is must lie. Chris Ballard just
it's not a lie. It's not a lie. Every team is open for business.
Sorry, that's
every team has their draft pick. Will take a phone call about their draft pick. Hey, let me say something. Guess what? The Bears are open for business. Oh, the Texans are open for business. Oh,
No,
the
that's
Colts
what
are
I
open
meant.
for everybody's
No.
fucking open for business. This is the most desperate, thirsty for content topic that any of these guys like A to Z, Titans, MCM, all
Wow.
these guys, they're just so thirsty. They're doing whole shows about, well, what if the Titans trade up? What does that look like? What if the Titans trade back? What does that look like? Like, guess what? We do that every fucking year.
Well,
Every fucking year.
so I misspoke, much like Tim Kelly did. I misspoke. What I meant is that it doesn't indicate what his like preferred strategy is. Like you just say it because you have to say it. Like
I
everybody's open
don't
for
think anybody's
business.
gonna get anything. I think you're just gonna have to use his actions
Yes.
as what you're gonna get out of Rand Carthon because, like I said, he was not as snuggly. He's not snuggly in this press conference at the combine like he was at the opener. So I
Yes.
don't think you're gonna get jack shit out of him until it hits the news and Ian Rappaport or Adam Schefter tweet it because ain't no local guy's gonna tweet it.
Well, and I was listening to Chris Ballard speak, which is he just always sounds like he's lying because he sounds like an SEC football coach when he talks. I think what's fascinating, what I wanted to ask you about with this topic is because we've already discussed ad nauseum what it would look like to go up and get your guy if you've evaluated your guy. We talked a lot about, and we will talk way more about what the right priority should be at 11. We haven't really gotten deep into that conversation yet, but we'll do that after the combine, after we see more of these players. I just wanted your opinion. If they were to move back to 22 and take a receiver or a lineman or whatever, maybe it's an edge rusher, because that could be another possibility that people haven't talked a lot about, especially if Dupree's getting cut. I just want to know what you think. Like, what would your reaction be, and what do the fans' reactions be if, for months and months and months as the season's ending, we want that top pick, and then they just go, all right, we'll take an extra second to move back to 23.
I think they'd be fine with it. I think for the last 7 years, every year under John Robinson, all Titans fans have wanted is for someone is just to trade back. The Isaiah Wilson pick, trade back. I'd be so happy if they traded out that Caleb Farley pick. And it's not about the players that they selected.
Right.
It was the whole thing. And you're talking about a deep draft in certain situations in positions of need. Trade back. I think most would be okay with it because I feel like at number 11 is just some weird purgatory.
I totally agree
you're
with
hoping that Anthony Richardson is there, but then wouldn't you really just want Paris Johnson? And none of the receivers are really capturing your attention right now. It's just weird pick. And so I think that's why everybody wants them to trade up and show conviction that they have a guy. But I think if you polled everybody what their second choice would be, I would think that it would be the second majority would be trading back.
It's weird because that's how I've started to formulate, not my big board, but that's kind of what it is. It feels like there's a drop off right around 8, 9-ish maybe.
Yeah.
And so you're like, okay, go up to 6 or 7 and you're guaranteed to get your guy.
Or look at it this way. It goes to the prospects, right? Because you're talking about at least you're expecting, if you believe what everybody's saying, 4 quarterbacks to go off the board in the first 10 picks. Okay. So that leaves you 6 players. Okay. That's what people are expecting. So let's just use that. So 6 players. Well, Jalen Carter is going to be gone. Will Anderson's going to be gone. That one offensive lineman is going to be gone and one cornerback's probably going to be gone.
Christian Gonzalez probably, right?
Yeah, Christian Gonzalez. Maybe Devon Witherspoon creeps up in there. So the people that you're picking from is Paris Johnson, maybe what's the Clemson edge rusher?
You got Miles Murphy and Brian Brise.
Yeah, it's just none of those names really pique your interest.
There's a little, and I agree with. So I don't think there'll be 4. I think there's be 3 quarterbacks in the top 10. But we'll get to
that's totally different.
We'll get to Richardson.
I agree with you.
We'll get to Richardson in a second, but I do agree that there's Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, the 3 quarterbacks. That's 5, and then again, if you're going by pure talent, you might actually put this is for you, Mike and Justin. Bijan Robinson might belong in the top 5 or 6 in terms of pure talent, but he's not going to.
About this Bijan Robinson,
he's going to go way back.
If he's going to be so generational, he needs to break every combine record for every running back. Because I've seen people say he's going to come in and run like a 4.5, maybe barely under 4.5, and I'm thinking, well, what's so special? This feels like the Kyle Pitts generational talk and everything. I think he's very good, but I don't think he's this generation going to be the. Saquon Barkley really never turned into generational. People are like, well, he's the next generational running back since Saquon Barkley. Well,
yeah. So I've covered football. I've covered college football a long time, and Bijan Robinson and Saquon Barkley are not in the same ballpark.
Yeah,
so.
I don't think so either. I think that Bijan Robinson is a little bit better than Saquon Barkley, but I'm going to say this. The last generational running back that come out of college and labeled as generational running back in my mind is Adrian Peterson. There's been nobody since then that I feel like is a true generational changing quarterback or running back. And it's a position that is not, that means he'll go high. Here's what I think. I think there are 10 to 15 first round talents. I think there's five elite talents out of that 10 to 15. Like it's very small.
The only reason I brought up Bijan and the only two names, because I voted for Jonathan Taylor twice for the Heisman and Derrick Henry as well, and maybe McCaffrey's in there. Those are the only modern three that I would put on the Adrian. But I agree with you, because I covered Adrian Peterson coming out of high school. There is no running back since Herschel Walker and Bo Jackson in the 80s that compares to Adrian Peterson physically coming out of high school and college. That's it. So you're not going to hear me argue with you about Adrian Peterson. The reason I brought up Bijan Robinson is relative to the rest of his class.
Yeah.
And to like the last 5 or 10 classes. And I think Will Anderson fits that mold. Jalen Carter fits that mold. Maybe the 2 or 3 quarterbacks do, but I agree with you. That's kind of it. I like the Van Ness kid out of Iowa. I think is great. I think there's really great players, but if you move back to 22 and you get a pick 51 out of the deal, that's where you're going to get
a big difference between, unfortunately, because, all regular season I said, lose this game, get the higher draft pick. And now you get to the draft and you're kind of looking at all the players and shaking. It's like Paris Johnson is the best possible scenario for a stick and pick, a best possible realistic scenario. I think that Anthony Richardson could be, there, but I don't think so.
I don't think Richardson's going to be there. I think Levis could be there, and I don't want to see that.
If they draft Levis, we're covering a new team.
You're done. We're just going to be a Jacksonville show from now on.
No, make sure you go. It's definitely not going to be a Jacksonville show.
Make sure you go to the pharmacy. Make sure you go to the Kingston Group. Don't make any decisions about your house. Use the Kingston Group, of course, Nashville's locally owned custom home and remodeling firm, and of course the pharmacy as well. So let's get into some positions of value here, and there's going to be a conversation about Jeffrey Simmons versus the franchise quarterback. But I do want to allude to what you guys were talking about on Football and Other Efforts. Go check out that show, of course, on the YouTube page and on everywhere you get your podcast. And that is that by and large, and I was doing this looking at the position. I ranked my positions, and it's sort of the same when we do like positions that you're watching this weekend. I'm not sure there's a position other than Jeffrey Simmons, and I think this is what you said. Like, I'm watching almost every position because I think almost every option is on the table for this team. There's not really a position that they could draft in the first round that would totally shock me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Other than defensive tackle, I guess.
Sense. It's just, it would be like, where are they at in the draft, I guess? Like, that to me is kind of like where I'm at with it. Like, right now, Harold Landry, because of his contract, and Jeffrey Simmons are the guys that you're technically untouchable, and then of course the rookies coming in. But my question is that these people, Joe Rexrode wrote about this column, and he said that he thinks that it may have to include Jeffrey Simmons to move up to the number 1 spot. I don't necessarily agree with that, but let's say in the world where that is the only way you can move up, trade his ass, get his ass out of here.
Really?
If this team has conviction, get the franchise quarterback. Okay. Here's how I would rank the importance of a franchise player at different positions. Franchise quarterback, your elite offensive line. I would go elite cornerback, elite pass rusher, elite wide receiver, and then your elite defensive tackle, game wrecker, whatever you want to call it. Like, he's like 6th or 7th most important position on the team.
So I have quarterback at number 1.
Yeah.
The person who neutralizes the quarterback is the defensive end or the outside pass rusher.
So you get with edge at 2.
But basically, the guy who protects the quarterback, who's the most important, is the left tackle mostly, or right tackle if you're a lefty, I guess. But like, to me, it's those 3 clearly are the top 3. Then there's a debate between the elite weapon on the outside, because this is almost all now about salary. Like, the NFL will tell you what it values by how they're drafted and how they get paid. And defensive. Now, I will say that I do think sometimes defensive tackles are a little bit more like tight ends, in that just not everybody has an elite one. Like there's just only so many of them to go around.
But what good is it? Like without the elite quarterback, I mean, okay, can I say something?
No, you're not allowed to talk on your own show.
Isn't Jeffrey Simmons kind of replaceable?
Fuck no, dude.
You don't think so? Because they replaced Albert Haynesworth with Jarrell Casey and Jarrell Casey with Jeffrey Simmons. And if you really look at it, Jeffrey Simmons has a habit of disappearing for stretches at a time. And if you really think about it, you got defensive tackles flying in everywhere on the NFL that are just as that. I think people overrate their own player. And
that's that part probably true. But
and do you think? Let me ask you this: what sets you up better for the future?
Oh, yeah. So here, I will agree with you on one thing. If you told me like 24-year-old Patrick Mahomes, 24-year-old Jeffrey Simmons, who am I taking? And I can trade one for the other. I'm taking the quarterback. Like that part I'm not arguing with you about. Like if you can trade Jeffrey Simmons almost 1-for-1 and just get your guy, and he's guaranteed to be as good at quarterback as Jeffrey Simmons is as defensive tackle, then I'm totally in. I'm totally down for that. That's obviously not the case with a completely unproven college prospect, where you have to, the conviction better be off the charts. Like,
let me ask you this:
better be off the charts.
Let's say you trade Jeffrey Simmons and you picked up Kalisha Cansey, the guy that's basically being called baby Aaron Donald and Bryce Young. Isn't that much better? I mean, like, I don't feel that there is value in the defensive tackle position enough. And I think that the Aaron Donald is a prime example. And I think it took the Rams to get we saw how much Aaron Donald meant when in the 2017 Super Bowl where they lost to the Patriots, right?
Yeah.
It didn't matter because you could scheme for him and everything else. Like the people could scheme for Jeffrey Simmons. And then you go and look, they go get Matt Stafford, and that changes the entirety.
Man, when you texted me, when you set this up to like, hey, I think we're going to talk about this. Let's discuss this. Like at first I thought you were batshit crazy. I was like, this is absurd. But I do think let's switch it around a little bit and play the role of the Bears. And like, it's not any different. If you've got a proven commodity at defensive tackle, because even as good as Jalen Carter and Will Anderson are, Jeffrey Simmons is proven. He is a proven all-pro, kind of best in the world at his position. If you're the Bears, do you want the number 1 pick and take an unproven commodity in Jalen Carter, or do you want Jeffrey Simmons? And I think you could easily argue, if you're the Bears, you'd much rather have Jeffrey Simmons.
I think you could. And then I also think, like, do they really want to go ahead and spend a bunch of money on a defensive tackle than probably have another defensive tackle? Or would they rather spend that money elsewhere building up the offensive line? Now, they have a lot of cap, so that's a kind of a different situation. But I look at it from, like, it's a very deep defensive line draft. And it's, you're never going to, the games that he does take over, he takes over really well. But I just think, like, if you're asking me if I have to choose between Jeffrey Simmons and a franchise quarterback, I'm going Jeffrey Simmons. And if you're asking me to choose,
you're going quarterback.
I'm going quarterback. Sorry. And I'm going quarterback. And if you're asking me to say where I'm going to rank the importance of Jeffrey Simmons as a position, as an elite or franchise game wrecker, whatever you want to use to describe him, I would put it like 7th. It's the 6th or 7th most important position. It's probably, once you include head coaches, defensive coordinators, offensive coordinators, it's like way down. It's like barely top 10.
No, you make, these are all valid arguments, very logical and rational case to move Jeffrey Simmons. And some of that is that you're going to say,
and like I don't think they have to move Jeffrey Simmons to get up to the number 1 spot. I think that saying that is the only way that but it could foresee is not like open in your mind that just get rid of these first-round picks. They all suck.
It could be an extremely efficient way to do it, and it could save you $100 million potentially as well. So like there's a lot of reasons why I understand the argument. I do think that now maybe I'm biased because I'm a pedigree guy, and people are always like, I have to argue with like Big Ten fans all the time. Like, no, you're just SEC bias. I'm like, no, I'm a talent bias. Like I have bias towards the teams in college football that have acquired the most talent. and generally those people are from the Southeast. And Jeffrey Simmons is like what I like about guys who continue to prove their pedigree is that they're like, this was an elite high school prospect who was the number 1 defensive tackle coming out of high school, who would have been a top 5 number 1 defensive tackle coming out of college, if not for the injury, and has proven to be that player on the field in the NFL. So like that's the thing, is that it's so proven and the pedigree is there. I've also, man, like I've stood next to Vita Vea. I've stood next to a few defensive tackles, and there's nobody like Jeffrey Simmons. I'm not arguing your point about the position value.
Yeah.
Your point about going up to get the quarterback being more valuable, like saving the money on the cap, like all rational arguments, no question. I also think there's, at the same time, Jeffrey Simmons is a rare specimen in my opinion. So what about positions we're watching in the combine this weekend? Because I do think this is the same conversation. Like I agree with you. It depends on where they're picking. If they're picking 26th, no position would surprise me. Middle linebacker, guard, corner, maybe safety would surprise me. That might surprise me because they just paid Hooker and Byard, unless they do something with Byard's contract.
Byard.
I know. But like,
sorry,
honestly, if they take a quarterback, not surprised. If they trade up to get a quarterback, take one at 11, not shocked. I guess maybe if they have Derrick Henry, then running back's off the table. But if they trade Derrick Henry and you're at 26 because you've traded back, and Bijan's on the board, I wouldn't be surprised by that. Like, I'm not saying that's what I want to see. I'm just saying there's not really a position in this, like, that. I think this is a good thing for the Titans that they have. It's bad for their roster.
Yeah.
But it's good that they have real flexibility in this draft.
The offensive line has my full attention, obviously, but I'm gonna throw 2 positions that probably people aren't thinking the Titans need to be looking at or should have a priority at looking at. But the combine is for the guys, for you to be able to match tape with athletic traits. And the positions that have a high correlation between your relative athletic score, which takes all this combine stuff and puts into a nice little formula for you, are linebacker and tight end. And I think that the way that the Titans want to do stuff on defense and offense, they need a linebacker and tight end, because really right now doesn't sound like David Long is going to be re-signed if he's valuing his market a lot, because the first words out of Vrabel's mouth were durability when asked about re-signing David Long. Like, it's ridiculous.
They may not have a choice, but that's a different angle. So,
but these linebackers and tight ends are just so deep. And I am watching those 2 position groups to find hidden gems you can find in the 4th or 5th round that can provide you athleticism and violence. And tight ends can show you violence in their blocking game. And I am so interested to see how all these guys stack up athletically and who is posting some elite scores.
If the Titans are picking in the early 3rd round, and I don't know if he falls this far, he probably doesn't, but Noah Sewell I'm out of Oregon.
If he falls that far, I'd be super surprised.
Heat-seeking missile, man. Yeah. Like, I can't wait to see the RAS stuff, because I think he's going to test really well, and that's probably going to move him into like the early 2nd round.
Jack Campbell's getting he is all these last 2 days have been filled with Jack. It's up on my TV right now, but he's been on my Twitter feed. He has been in my mentions. Fans
Iowa.
of his on my mentions. Iowa linebacker. Yeah. He'll be testing today. Like, today is one of the most exciting days that I'm ready to watch. And there's stuff in the wide receivers and stuff, but like tight end and linebacker are 2 positions the Titans need to be focusing on in the middle of the draft. And they are positions that can, if you get the relative athletic score and it matches the tape production, you're going to find you some hidden gems.
So here's a quick anecdote about Campbell too, by the way. Didn't have to play in the bowl game because he had a little knee issue. Now that could also be a part of the medical evaluation process he's going to go through this weekend. But he had the knee scope and got it like cleaned up so that he could play in the bowl game. And the point I'm making here is, talking to some Iowa people about him, is that there's like this leadership, camaraderie, next level sort of thing with him, with his teammates. And that's a trait that I think Vrabel will love, in particular. And I agree. Like if they're going to let Long walk, and if he doesn't go to the market and doesn't like what he sees, and he comes back and they can get him for cheap, maybe. But like without him, you got nothing else there, and you're asking a lot of Monty Rice in what he's doing from an injury standpoint. He had some nice moments in the last month of the season, but you can't go to bat with Monty Rice as your starting middle linebacker.
I know what Will McDonald's going to do. He's probably going to blow the athletic testing out of the water. I'm really interested to see what Keon White does. And there's other guys like 8-8, our guy 8-8 down there in from TCU. I always get TCU and Northwestern mixed up. Either way, 8-8. But there's other guys that are going to be going today that I'll be keeping up with, and I'm going to highlight some of those guys as Northwestern. I knew that was wrong. TCU. I'm getting Steve Avila.
Well, no, they're all purple. It's fine. Yeah. It could have been Kansas State.
And then we're today, I'll be updating the combine data sheet that I've created for paid subscribers of Stacking the Inbox. So I'll also use that to highlight maybe some pro comps and maybe looking at, here are some guys that need to be on your radar in the later round. And I think that's what this is useful for, is useful to take all this information. And I do not know why. I'm sorry. I'm looking up at the screen and they have set up Ian Rappaport in the middle of these two guys. And I don't know if he's he just moved his chair up finally, but he was like way down. Like he was.
You're doing on-screen production for NFL Network
like
now?
Way down. I was like, why is he down so far?
I will say this. I agree that like the correlation between the RAS and the success at those two positions is probably very high. I would probably argue safety's up there too. But the other thing is the thing that matters, I think, a lot at linebacker at middle linebacker is something you cannot teach, and that is instincts and recognition. Like at middle linebacker, to be truly great, you got to have all the physical stuff, but you got to be able to read and react as fast as possible. It is about processing. You are in the box looking at probably 8 players, right? You probably got 3 receivers split out. You've got 8 players that are all going to move at the same time at the snap of the ball, and you have to read all 8 of them at the same time. And that's what makes middle linebacker so much more about instinct, diagnosing, and then reacting all in a half a second. And that's
why you got to take this and put it with the film.
The S and the S2 stuff. That's where the middle linebacker, I think the S2 stuff will be interesting. Again, there's a bunch of linebackers. You can always get them normally, second, third round. You can find starters at that position, second, third round. You can find starters at tight end, second, third round. You can find starters at guard and center, second, third round. You can find running backs in the 3rd and 4th round. Like you can find a lot of talent in this draft. So moving back, we'll see. But I'm all in on the quarterbacks because I just, I'm obsessed with the quarterbacks like everybody else. But let's get to Richardson here. I think Anthony Richardson is the 3rd best quarterback in the draft class. Mm-hmm. I think he has the most pure athletic talent of anybody in the draft class. And it is going to depend on if you think you can patiently wait to get him to his ceiling. If you can do that, then I think Richardson is he's closer to Bryce Young and CJ Stroud than Will Levis will ever dream of being.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
He's got the most of everything, and he's going to test. He's going to run a 4.49 at 239 pounds, and we're going to all be like, oh, my God.
I'm not getting wrapped up into the quarterbacks at all in this combine, no matter unless Will Levis just falls flat on his face, and then I'll be there to chime in on that.
I'm sure you will.
But I agree. The Titans are in a perfect position, right? With Ryan Tannehill, you're in a perfect position to not have to play Anthony Richardson. Here's the thing about Anthony Richardson: this rise that everybody's talking about. Oh, this just rise is just too quick. It's because the media is just now getting around to watching game film of Anthony Richardson.
NFL media.
NFL media. Your draft scouts, your draft analysts that are all filtering in. They're just now watching the film. And when you're in the middle of the college season, there's only so many players you can watch in the college season. There's only so much tape you can have. And Anthony Richardson's tape for the season, he only has one. So he's inexperienced.
There were people in 2021 when he was a backup and getting lots of reps they were putting him in as a backup. And he had like 3 80-yard runs
as
a backup. in
I mean,
2021.
that's great if you're a running back. That doesn't mean anything.
No, he was throwing the ball too. He was
Yeah.
averaging like 9 yards per touch as a quarterback, throwing and running the football. 9 yards per touch as a backup, and people were in the college worlds, I'm telling you, were already saying future number 1 pick when he was a backup at Florida in 2021. I don't know what these NFL people do on Saturdays. What do they do on Saturdays?
They're working for the NFL. I mean, like the NFL, sorry, college football, but if you work for the NFL, guess where you're doing? You're probably focusing on the fucking NFL.
No, I know. I'm just even fans though. Like, so quick.
They're watching their team. Like, unless you're a Florida fan or you're the team playing Anthony Richardson, you only get highlights. And then there was the great highlights from Utah, and then you really didn't see a lot after that. I don't think shooting Mike Vrabel just now. Nice. So I understand. The problem is that there's only to make a good assessment. You can't use the 2021 tape. You have to use
no. Of course. What I'm saying is that people knew the talent was there even before he became a starter.
Yes, your college beatniks that don't matter in the context that we're talking about.
You hurt my feelings here.
Yeah, well, you guys knew, but we're not talking about you guys. We're talking about the guys that are talking now and putting up the rise on Anthony Richardson. And let me tell you this. This goes back to what I said on Football Under Their Efforts, and I believe I've said it here before. The draft board does not change. Anthony Richardson was already high on the majority of NFL teams' draft boards. You know why? Because he came out of college and declared for the draft, and he could have stayed in the draft, but except for he was given a folder with background from NFL teams that said, hey, you are ranked really, really high right now on everybody's draft boards. You have first round potential and first round grades. You're probably top 10. That is what the NFL teams have already told Anthony Richardson. So this rise stems from the media's lack of paying attention during the regular season of the college football world.
Oh, I 1,000,000% agree. Again, I am reiterating that point.
Yeah.
By saying anyone who watched him, even as a backup, knew this guy had top 5 potential. So I agree with you. I think scouts.
The Utah game, boom! I knew that guy was something. I was like,
yes, the guy that you do not put a guy like. Again, he was a freshman coming in off the bench at 6'4", 240, running 4.4s. You don't need. It's not rocket science.
He's not raw. He's inexperienced. That is how I think that is. I think people are Malik Willis with multiple years of college experience was a raw prospect. Anthony Richardson is light years ahead of Malik Willis, and he's just got a lack of experience. That's how I would differentiate the two.
The only thing, and you're not going to learn this at the combine, the only question I have with him is going to be because he's better in the pocket with his footwork than Malik is as a sophomore at Florida. Light years ahead. The question is going to be, why was his open receiver miss rate as high as it kind of was? And some of that's that Florida's offensive line was atrocious and the running game was not particularly great. They didn't have a great balance with him. Now, Kentucky fans are going to say, look, don't hate on Levis because we didn't have a good offensive line either. But Will Levis is not the same talent as Anthony Richardson. It's not in the same ballpark for me. So, but
watch a 2021 film of Will Levis, and you know that he wasn't good in 2021. This 2021 Will Levis film, where is this?
He was better. He was better than 20.
But it's not good. So
and Liam Cohen was the coordinator at that point. Who was a Rams Sean McVay protege, and that's why he's back at Kentucky because it was the best offense that Kentucky's had in a while.
Right.
But that's not really setting the bar all that high because Kentucky's offense has not been that good at all.
No.
But I agree with your basic point, which is that every one of these GMs knew about Anthony Richardson for like 18 months, like 24 months ago is what I'm trying to say. And I agree with you completely.
He would not have came out of he would have stayed in college, collected some NIL money if he thought that his stock would be higher in 2024 than what it is right now.
I'm willing to bet you there's probably like 6 to, I don't know how many teams are going to be in the market. Let's say for a quarterback, I would say a quarter of them will have him much lower, right? But I think 3/4 of them, 75% of teams in the market for a quarterback are going to be very high on Anthony Richardson. The question is going to be, are they ahead of the Titans in the draft?
Right.
And are those teams there or not? Or is it like Indianapolis just misevaluating him and he's like way down their board and because they're just dumb. So
and he's already blowing the interviews away, which we knew he would. I mean, like
he's not. Here's the thing though, that
he's
people
a smart guy.
he's not a roo rah rah guy though. Like he is I talked to him and some of the people around him at media days. He's a pretty calm, like pretty quiet, pretty chill, like lead by example. He doesn't like give speeches. Like he's not one of those kind of guys, which of course will remind Titans fans of another particular quarterback in town. But that is his style, is to be sort of kind of chill and relaxed and quiet. He's not like I'm going to give the speech in the huddle, and get people fired up yet. So maybe that's something he needs to develop. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. So we'll see. Either way, enjoy the combine. Make sure you check out all the great coverage across the combine from all the great shows from 440 Sports and Broadway Sports Media. You got Stack in the Inbox. You got Football and Other F Words. We'll be back on Monday to react to all of this stuff and see what else happens in Indianapolis from here on out. There'll be some rumors. At any point, the Titans could make a decision about their freaking quarterback. At any point, that could happen. And we'll be ready to go with some content for you. So thank you guys for hanging out with us. Kingston Group, the pharmacy, make sure you check out and support good local businesses. BuildKG.com is the website, and the pharmacy, of course, over there on McFerrin Avenue in East Nashville. They also have a location downtown as well. So I'm going downtown this weekend. Got no kids, got the wife and a couple friends. We're going to go watch go to the Ryman and catch a show. So maybe we'll go swing by the pharmacy downtown.
There you go.
Before we go to the Ryman, check out Dawes this weekend. Solid. Not my favorite band in the world, but solid.
Who?
You don't know Dawes? You never heard of Dawes? Okay, all right.
Are they country?
No. It's like I don't know how you define them. Rock and roll? I don't know. I'm surprised you've never. When the Tequila Runs Out, it's a pretty good band. They're a pretty good band. Go check them out. DAWES. Go check them out and come say hi if you're downtown.
I'll add 'em.
There you go. At F Words Pod, you can follow him there. His name is Zach Lyons. See, there you go. Stoney knows him. A little bit of everything is a phenomenal song. Go check that song out. When My Time Comes, amazing. My daughters love it. All right, we're done. Thanks for hanging out with us. Have a great weekend. For Zach, I'm Braden. This is a football show.